Okay. My name is Cindy Murray, and I've been on board with FANS since, we first thought about organizing way back in 2009. And I'm going to introduce our speaker, but I'd like to take care of one or two little housekeeping things. First thing is if we could all quiet our cell phones. I'm pretty sure I quieted mine, but I will just check. Yep, good to go. And there is a restroom if you haven't been here before. It's around through the little kitchen area just to the back behind us. Okay, well, first of all, I'd like to just tell you a few things that we're doing. How many have ever read our newsletter, which comes out monthly? You can access it on our website. Yay, yay! The newsletter is a free thing. You can just open up the website, go to Friends and Neighbors of the Deschutes Canyon area and look for the newsletter. And all of our hikes are posted there, all of our programs. In fact, all of our programs for the rest of 2024 are posted on there. And you can usually sign up for the program, somewhere around 30 days before the date of the program, but not earlier than that. And we've got some great things coming up. We have, how many use their binoculars and have spotting scopes? You like to look at the stars? Well, we have a night sky adventure coming up, and this is scheduled. It's coming right up. It's Friday, May 3rd, but it depends on clouds. So it could be the 4th, maybe the 10th, or the 11th, and you'll know if you watch our website. There will be an announcement on there. If it's too cloudy and we can't see stars, it won't be much of an adventure. Actually, Jeff Sheets and Eric Hansen are going to sponsor this. They will come with binoculars, telescopes, Jeff, maybe?
Yes.
Telescopes, which they normally have all pre-set up. And it is quite an adventure. I believe this starts kind of late. 9 to 11 p.m. Yep. So we're going to hope for the best, that it's really great weather. Sign up through our website. It's open right now, and that'll fill up pretty fast. Let's see. Someone said, how many do we have signed up, Trish, already?
We're about halfway full.
Okay, so there's only a couple of weeks left. So if you were really interested, put your name in there. We've got some fantastic hikes coming up. The next one coming up is going to be May 8th, and that is going to be led by Eric Hansen, and it's Opal Springs Loop. It's about 7 to 8 mile loop. And there's going to be hundreds of wildflowers. And you'll also see lots of fun birds out there. And we have our nest box hike coming right up. And that is going to be that'll be May 18th. Only 6 people can sign up for that. It's open now. If you were interested in taking a short, easy little tour, you'll be walking on a path. It's all flat. You'll see about 10 nest boxes. They may not have chicks in them, but they'll be mountain bluebirds and American kestrels. And if you're lucky enough, you'll actually see some chicks in there. Maybe some other surprises. I won't tell you what. And all the hikes are listed on our website. We have a lot of interesting things coming up. We have geology hikes, we have wildflower hikes, and in fact, speaking of geology, our next Lens on Learning program next month, May 11th, the day before Mother's Day, that's easy to remember, we are going to have one of our very favorite geology speakers, Danielle McKay, People from Bend probably know her or have seen her programs. So she's going to give us new insights on the geology of Oregon's high desert. So sign up for that too. Okay, now I'd like to introduce Carly Foster with Oregon Natural Desert Association, ONDA. Most of you are familiar with ONDA. And she's here to tell us all about the wonderful, fantastic, beautiful area of what's known as the Owyhee Canyonlands. And she's also going to share the latest progress with the campaign to get permanent protection for this beautiful land. It's one of the last large pieces of intact wilderness type area that we hope will be made into designated a national monument by the end of the year. You got to put your vote in, you got to put your support in to get this done. Okay, Carly.
I'm humbled by that introduction. I was like already really activating and powerful. So we're in the mode, and I'm grateful to be here today. Happy Earth Month and Happy Earth Weekend. Day I think is actually Monday, so I wore my earth earrings, and I'm just excited to talk about one of my favorite places on earth with you all. And hopefully, if you haven't been there yet, this presentation will also encourage you to go there and see it for yourself, because I think the best way to become conservationists is to build a relationship with the land and then have a bleeding heart for it and want to protect it. I know that's my way of engaging with the place. But as Cindy said, my name is Carly Foster. I work for Oregon Natural Desert Association. I am on the conservation team, and I manage our campaigns. And right now, our biggest campaign is the campaign to protect the Owyhee. And I'll go a little bit into the history of how we came to be in this campaign, but how ONDA's been long involved in protections of this place, and the many iterations that have brought us to the current efforts in 2024. A little bit about my background. I am an Oregonian. I'm from Western Oregon, now living in Bend. I actually moved here from Idaho though, so before that, my saying now is that I'm from rust to dust, and I'm really happy to be here from the coastal mountains to Bend, and having been in the McCall area in Idaho is a happy medium. So I actually, as a Western Oregonian, did not know much about the Owyhee Canyonlands, as many Western Oregonians do not, and maybe even Eastern and Central Oregonians. So I think that's what's long protected the Owyhee, is its remoteness, and it's kind of this hidden gem. But I will be talking about how, unfortunately, that's just really not the case anymore, and some pretty heavy players have found out about the Owyhee and really want to change that landscape that's our shared public lands. So I came to know the Owyhee actually by living in Idaho, and a lot of Boise people have as well. The largest growing city in the West has definitely discovered this place, and it's kind of the Wild West out there. But that's kind of the background of my connection to this place. But now living and working for ONDA, I have an intimate relationship that I hope to share with you through this presentation. So here's an overview of where ONDA, and we're really kind of the key conservation org that protects Oregon's high desert. We like to say that Oregon is a desert state because over a half of, or over, a little over a third is actually high desert, but we get kind of overshadowed by the rainforest side, as you all know, in the West. And so these are kind of our core key areas of public lands that we try to protect. And it just so happens that these areas encompass 12 million public land acres. That's a humongous effort to try to protect. And we leave kind of the northeast corner and the rest of the west up to some of our other conservation partners. So we're kind of just that big area here, and you'll see the Owyhee Canyonlands in Oregon is in that southeast corner. The Owyhee River watershed actually starts in that, I wish I had a pointer, but hopefully we're all following on the map. The northern section of Nevada, that is where the watershed starts. That's actually in the Duck Valley Indian Reservation, and the waters flow upward to the Columbia. So as most watersheds around this area, they all flow into the Columbia.
And at one point in time, there was actually Chinook salmon that came all the way to northern Nevada. And 50-pound Chinook salmon used to be sold on the streets of Winnemucca, which is actually a really cool thought when you think about that and just how really important this area is and this watershed. And it is, I believe, about, with the encompassing lands, it's about 11 million acres, expanding Idaho, Nevada, and Oregon. And there's some amazing canyon wall pictures. Obviously, amazing rugged landscape. It is kind of hard to get to. Like I said, I think that's why it's been long protected by its remoteness. We have 500 miles of desert rivers. In Oregon, we do have a wild and scenic river section. That's where a lot of people go rafting, and you flow up north. So that is the only permanent protections on the landscape in Oregon right now. It's about 5% of the Oregon Owyhee is protected through the Wild and Scenic River Corridor, which is only, about a mile buffer on either side. So all the uplands are currently unprotected. This is Iron Point Canyon. This is where you float through when you take a raft trip. I cannot tell you how big these walls are. It's very humbling. You are but just a speck in that water when you look up. So this is where the Owyhee got the nickname Oregon's Grand Canyon, is really through this section of the geology. And fun fact, it was actually the Yellowstone hotspot that created most of the Owyhee 17 million years ago. And so the current hotspot that lives in Wyoming and Montana is the same geology forces that created this here. So it's really cool, really dynamic. And then you also have a lot of basalt flows from other formations. The lands are home to the Paiute, Northern Paiute, Shoshone, and Bannock peoples. And if you go visit the place, I'm sure you're all really good stewards of the land, but you will come across a lot of cultural artifacts there. Always leave those in place, never disturb them. That's part of the call for protections from tribal communities. Is we are seeing an increase in vandalism, which is really concerning, and an increase in looting of cultural resources, which honestly are absolutely countless out there. The Bureau of Land Management has only documented 10% on record of the archaeological sites. So you can just imagine how much is out there. This is a great shot of kind of getting out of the canyon and what the uplands look like. It is definitely pristine sagebrush habitat where you find myriad of species that are dependent on these really intact sagebrush grasslands and ecosystems. Of course, your favorite high desert wildlife live there and call this place home. This slide is actually a little outdated because we just did an audit on a values report trying to look at all the species in there, and we found that there's actually closer to 350 species, and that's not including birds. So if you can imagine like the immense biodiversity that this place harbors, I do have one fun fact. There are 14 species of bats alone in the Owyhee, which is just kind of mind-boggling because I think we always think of like one bat in our head or just a couple, but there's 14 bat species alone. So I actually don't even think we know the scale to which, because it's so understudied and so under-resourced through the BLM's district there. But we do know 26 endemic plants for sure. Including that beautiful plant up there, the Packard's Blazing Star. Recently, you might have heard in the news that Lakeview district of the BLM was designated as a dark night sky country. It's only a matter of time until the Owyhee is also designated as such. It's just some paperwork that needs to be filed. But it is one of the most impressive dark night skies we have left in the country. And you can see that black area in the southeast corner of Oregon and Idaho and Nevada. That is the Owyhee. This picture was actually taken on a raft trip I went to last spring. So I witnessed this. I also got to see the northern lights in the Owyhee, if you can imagine that. I don't have a picture of that because it's really hard to get long exposure on the northern lights, but that is just the scale to which how dark and beautiful the skies are out there. All right. What else is great about this place? Boundless recreation, of course. It is a big river destination for river people. kayaking, rafting. It's quite adventurous. The water fluctuates a lot, and you can't always commercially run the river because there's not always a lot of water, and climate change is a big threat to this area, but it has run for the last 2 years, including this year. The Owyhee is running, and if you're considering taking a raft trip, it might be the year to go if you can find a company to take you out there, or go yourself if that's your thing. One wonderful trout species, big fishery out there. Okay, so I kind of went over some of the values of the place, if you're unfamiliar, which are immense, and I could keep talking about them forever, but I wanted to get into a little bit of the history of how my organization, ONDA, and our volunteers and board members really came to understand the need for the protections of this place. So about, I believe it was like early 2000s, there was this push to try to document all the wilderness quality lands on the landscape because, like I said, the BLM district that covers the Owyhee, that's the Vail district, they only have 3 staff for the 5 million acres that they cover. So they actually really do need support and help to understand how much wilderness quality lands are out there. So over many years, we had volunteers go out and survey these lands and document them, which resulted in this map here, which is a general overview of the 2.5 million acres of wilderness quality lands. And really, wilderness quality lands just has some key points that makes them such, like there's not a lot of man-made roads, there's not a lot of light pollution, there's not housing, etc. So there are these, specifications that make them such, and then that inventory was the hope and the basis for trying to get these lands protected, because we've now documented their immense value for wilderness quality. So through those inventories, they led through some pretty amazing conservation efforts, including the Sage Grouse Plan, which just dropped from the administration this week. And we're going to be commenting on that through June. And if you follow ONDA's e-newsletter, you'll have a chance to comment on that yourself soon. But this year, we also won a big court case that we've been fighting for 29 years as an organization, which is the Southeast Oregon Resource Management Plan Amendment. Because through our inventories, we were able to show the administration that there are in fact a lot more wilderness quality lands that they need to consider in their plan. And so they just elevated 400,000 acres of lands with wilderness characteristics as wilderness study areas. So essentially they elevated those lands to be higher protected. And that includes things like a mineral withdrawal, so industrial mining can't lay claims on those lands. That's like pretty much the big one that is really important for our shared public lands. So that protection is amazing. However, it will only last as long as the life of the plan. And BLM resource management plans last for about 20 to 30 years. So you can imagine it took 30 years to get 30 years of protection, because that's how these things work and that's how hard it is, to operate in these systems. So it is just one more reason that we gotta go for the long game and we gotta think about future generations, because unfortunately these plans are impermanent and things can change with any administration, as we know. So since then, we've really been pushing, since our first wilderness inventories, we've really been pushing for those permanent protections. I wanted to give this quick slide here about the protections in Idaho, which were garnered in 2009. So about 500,000 acres were elevated as wilderness in the Owyhee Canyonlands in Idaho. So as I was mentioning earlier, that's the Duck Valley Indian Reservation, and so they actually protect the beginning of the watershed and then going into, and once it gets to the border of Oregon, all those protections stop. So we're really trying to look at, landscape scale conservation. This wilderness was designated by Congress. So in Idaho, let's just pause and think about it. In Idaho, in 2009, 500,000 acres were protected through Congress. And here we are in 2024, and Oregon is still stonewalling protections for Owyhee. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the politics of that and why it's been so challenging. But we would like to follow suit of Idaho's legacy here. So now let's fast forward to 2014. This was when we really took all those inventories and we said it's time to do something with this and make permanent protections. So there have been a couple iterations of an Owyhee Canyonlands protection campaign. As you can see on the left, there was a Live Monumental movement. Keen Footwear went around the state and was helping us try to get monument protections in 2014. And there was a big push during the Obama administration to get the monument campaign. Unfortunately, you might be familiar with the Malheur Refuge takeover. And that happened at the end of 2015, at the end of Obama's administration, and that put a kibosh on all protections. And really, it didn't have to necessarily do with the monument at all, but the communities were really upset at the federal government, so it was a very heated time, and unfortunately the National Monument Campaign just totally went to sleep, and it was not time to pursue that. There ended up being a lot of stakeholder divide, a lot of urban and rural infighting, and so fast forward, here's the old campaign, we called it Wild for the Owyhee, and a lot was going on at that time. But fast forward to 2019, we had Senator Wyden decided that he wanted to bring stakeholders together who were in the original National Monument movement and try to figure out a solution that would adhere to everybody's needs. So that included ranchers, which formed a coalition called the Owyhee Basin Stewardship Collaborative, and they're still a membership today. It included pulling in the Burns Paiute tribe and ONDA, many other conservation groups and other local landowners adjacent to these public lands. So through years of conversations, years of roundtable at Senator Wyden's behalf, he came up with the bill S1890, which is the Malheur CEO Act. It's the Malheur Community Empowerment for the Owyhee Act. It's a very long name. But the idea was that he's empowering the Malheur County through wilderness designation. So we're no longer talking about a administrative monument. We're now talking about the Wilderness Bill, which is still in Congress today. It actually awaits on Congress floor. But what is the reality, unfortunately, of this bill is that Representative Bentz, which is the Eastern Oregon representative, has actually introduced a counter bill to squash Senator Wyden's bill. So what we know is that Senate can introduce a bill, but we need the House to also pass a companion bill. And without the majority of voters that would support 1.1 million acres of wilderness, it's very unlikely that the bill will get out of Congress and get passed through Congress. And he has introduced the bill 5 times. So this is where we're at, is just this circling the drain of hoping to get wilderness protections. And the reason that this really can't wait any longer are some pretty serious threats are coming to the landscape. We're seeing an influx of industrial mining claims, particularly looking for cobalt, lithium, uranium to build EV batteries. And although we need to balance, our future for electrified grid, we have to do that really conscientiously and really decide, is the last sagebrush stronghold the place we want to tear up, for industrial scale mining, especially in Oregon where we've never had industrial scale mining. We don't have mining districts like Nevada, so we'd really be ground zero for this rush for lithium and this rush for an electrification. And what we know is that can come with really big dollars and really big players to, unfortunately, with no layers of protection on the landscape, completely demolish an area. And then sage grouse, although not a listed endangered species, they truly are an endangered species, and this is their last stronghold of sagebrush. So There's other myriad of reasons that time is really running out for the Owyhee, including, as I mentioned, Boise. I love Boise. I have many friends and family there, but there is an influx of use on the landscape. And remember when I told you that the BLM only has 3 managers? So they really do not have the resources to adhere to this influx of use on the landscape. I've heard many accounts from sportsmen's groups that an increase in poaching is happening on the landscape, including poaching from people's cars. They'll just shoot animals from their cars. Of course, vandalism. There's been a proposed highway through the Owyhee and an electrification grid for proposed solar in public lands. So all the, that beautiful intact habitat can definitely be torn up in an instant, and we're already seeing that, especially in the northern half of the Owyhee, where Boise influx has really taken over the landscape. And the BLM just really doesn't have all the resources they need to adhere to that. So a lot of things are happening. Don't want to get us down though, because I have a solution for us. Which is how we got to today, 2024, to pursue an Owyhee Canyonlands National Monument. This is not the same effort as it was in 2014. We're not going to mention the Malheur takeover. It is no longer in our sights. That really was 10 years, well, almost 10 years ago now, because that was in 2015. So this is a totally new day and a new dawn for the Owyhee. Part of which it's so politically viable to pursue this path is because the Biden administration, the Biden-Harris administration has supported what they are calling the America the Beautiful campaign, also known as 30 by 30, which is a call to protect 30% of our public lands by 2030. And to really achieve that, I'm trying to put this in perspective for us all, they do need millions of acres protected before 2030. Luckily, the Owyhee has millions of acres that they could protect, and it would fulfill this requirement of 30 by 30 lands protected. So we see this as truly one of the greatest conservation opportunities in the American West, certainly in the lower 48, because of this huge scale that is ready to be protected. So some other slightly depressing news. Oregon was recently ranked number 9 for conservation and environmental protections out of 11 Western states, the 11th being Arizona. We are behind Montana, Idaho, Nevada, California, Washington. We might not be behind Washington. Okay, Washington's right after us. So this is the scale here. This was put together by the Center for Western Priorities, which is a very helpful organization to kind of give us perspective. So this is a report you can find online if you're interested to learn more. Recently though, they named the Owyhee as the greatest conservation opportunity to fulfill our, basically lagging in needing protected areas. When you look at Oregon, you'll see from 2004 to 2014, we protected 237,000 acres of public land. Largely that was through the Cascade-Siskiyou National Monument in Southern Oregon. So that really bumped up our numbers, but that hasn't happened in over 10 years. We haven't had any large-scale lands protected permanently. So this is honestly concerning for, I think, all Oregonians, just thinking of our legacy that we're leaving, especially as we've become a more hot and crowded place. We really need to think about what our future is going to look like. So that's just an interesting tidbit. Okay, so I said this already, but Owyhee Canyonlands is truly the greatest conservation opportunity in the American West. And I'm going to transition really quick to show us a video because I want other people to speak about this place. Are we all cool if we watch like a 5-minute video and just kind of give me a break to talk? Okay, great. I'm in the video too, so I've already said some words. All right. Play the audio. Okay, great.
My connection to this land goes back 100,000 years. begins with my ancestors.
The Owyhee, it's been in the making for 17 million years. It's been sacred since time immemorial.
I was born and raised in the edge of this ecosystem, and I've been coming deep into these Owyhee Canyonlands since the 1960s. Every time you come out here, every trip will be unique. The smells will be a little different. You'll remember the breeze a little bit differently.
This canyon behind me is where we came as when I was a kid to recreate, to fish. It was my backyard.
My name is Wilson Weewa. I'm a Northern Paiute and Nez Perce. I come from the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. I come from a reservation where our traditions and customs are still a major part of our lives. I do gather our traditional foods from the ground, and I do gather our medicines. And so if I have a chance to visit a place like this, it's like solidifying our footprint on our Aboriginal territories and keeping that connection.
People think the desert is devoid of life, but there's so much going on out here. Mule deer love this country. There's bighorn sheep on the canyon rims. There's pronghorn antelope. The lizards out here are fantastic. And quite frankly, the snakes are pretty awesome out here also.
The Owyhee Canyonlands region is one of the greatest conservation opportunities left in the West.
In the face of climate change, there aren't very many big places where large populations of animals are free to move to where they can survive. This is one of those pieces, big enough to help sustain animals who can migrate.
We think they're fine, and we think they're somewhere far in the West. Well, this is that faraway place. This is the place where it needs to stay intact for those things to endure.
What makes the Owyhee Canyonlands region so special is its size. It's 7 million acre watershed over a 9 million acre plus region.
This Owyhee River system incorporates part of Nevada, part of Idaho, and the big heart of it all is right here in Oregon.
Very little population lives within the watershed and very few paved road miles. It's one of the West's last big strongholds of sagebrush. You can go out into the Owyhee and see the Milky Way like it's right there at your fingertips. It's special for our wildlife to have these night skies. It's special for us to be able to experience these dark night skies.
The Owyhee has long been protected because of its remoteness, and even though that's protected it for a really long time, we have to think about how we're going to bring more people here in a sustainable way.
I want people to see this landscape. I want them to come. But with that, we have to have proactive measures.
The Owyhee holds millions of acres of public lands, and all of those public lands are open to any number of development or extractive purposes and industries.
That's going to have effects to how we recreate and move through this land. It's going to have effects to the wildlife that have been migrating through this land for hundreds of years.
This whole land is our homeland. We're still here. We're a living culture. And people should respect that.
I used to think this country was doing a darn good job of protecting itself, and it didn't need any help from me. But I don't think that anymore. Permanent protection is about understanding how rare this is and understanding that we need to take care of it, and it won't just happen on its own.
There's such a diversity of different stakeholders that want to see this region protected.
This landscape has enough room for all uses. When protections happen in this landscape, ranching still is included. There's still recreation that will happen.
When we get involved in endeavors to protect places like this, it means a lot to us, because we're not only protecting the scenic quality of the land, we're protecting our homeland. Let's do it for those people that truly respect the land that want to enjoy the land, that want a future for the land so that their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren, as well as mine, can come out here and see what I'm seeing. If we can do that together, I think we can accomplish great things for the future.
Nicely done.
What's that? Oh, great. Glad to hear you liked it. If you ever get a chance to hear Wilson speak,
Highly recommend that in person. He's an awesome guy. Oh, sorry folks, I clicked the wrong button. We'll get back there. Okay, I know sometimes videos make us sleepy, so I'm almost through the talking parts, but and we'll get to the Q&A soon. So let's bring us back to present day, 2024. Where are we at? So in just a matter of months, there has been a huge push for this national monument protection. Part of the reason, as I said, it is politically viable in the Biden administration to protect large-scale landscapes through a national monument. We saw that with Owyhee down in Nevada, which is just outside of Las Vegas. 400,000 acres were protected there, and that's not even close to what we're asking, which is 1.1 million acres, which again would fulfill that 30 by 30 goal. And there is no other, landscape scale like that besides Chuckwalla, which is down in Southern California. They're looking at protecting about 600,000 acres. So I say we still got 500,000 on them. So we got a lot of acreage to protect. And again, when I talk about the acreage we're protecting, we're really looking at that most pristine habitat that was inventoried through those wilderness quality inventories. So I just shared a little bit about some of the stakeholders that have come to the table to call for these protections, some of which, including myself, went to Washington, D.C. last fall to advocate for these protections, and Wilson got to join us too, which was really fun. These are some of my friends from Fort McDermott Indian Reservation, Duck Valley Indian Reservation, and Klamath Nation. And so far, nations left and right are considering passing resolutions in support of the monument campaign, and they will take that to the Biden administration and have one-on-one consultation, government-to-government consultation. The one reason I'm really, really excited about that, which is different than the wilderness bill, is because these tribes will now have a more intimate say in what happens on the landscape. Whereas Wyden's wilderness bill really only involved the Burns Paiute tribe, which is great, but he did not consider other tribes in the region, including Duck Valley or McDermott, because they are outside of Oregon, but these are their homelands. So thinking at it of a federal protection, there's a lot more diversity in who can come to the table, and I think that that's really important. So one thing I'll talk to you all about today is how you can get involved. We do have a website called protecttheowyhee.org, and I have some leave behind so you can take that home if you're interested in checking that out and signing our petition. We just reached 45,000 signatures on our petition, which is really huge. My goal is to get to 50,000 by the end of Earth Month, because I think we can try to do that. So my hope is everyone here can sign the petition tonight. But these petitions are really important for persuading the Center for Environmental Quality, which is the people who designate the monuments at the Biden administration. We recently brought a big support book to them last week. There was a monuments fly-in, and so our executive director brought our book, and they said they were extremely impressed with all of the diversity of support we've seen, including one of the the Ontario City Councilman, Eddie Melendrez, went to DC to advocate for the Owyhee Monument. So remember when I said there was a big divide in 2015 over the monument? We now have the Ontario City Council members going and advocating for the Owyhee Monument. And part of the reason we've seen so much Eastern Oregon support is because people, it sounds like, people understand protections do need to be on this landscape because they're starting to see the influx of what, over recreation and overuse can do to the landscape. They also know that mining, though promising of jobs, can still run over communities. So I think they are more concerned because the threats are more real than they were 10 years ago. And so some people that were on the fence are saying, well, if protections are going to happen, then I want to be at the table. And I think that's really smart, and I think they should be at the table. And because monuments are meant to bring a bunch of people together and figure out how they will be managed. There is no one size fits all for a monument, and so a lot of provisions can happen within the proclamation. So other ways you can support. I have a couple options today. You can leave today with signing a letter to the Biden administration, which I will make sure gets to them and our Oregon senators Wyden and Merkley. If you feel so inclined to write your own personal letter in your own words, we love to see that as well. And I would personally love an emailed copy to me so I can put it in the support book. These support books are really how monuments are getting designated in 2024. It's a big fat book, and it has to show, wide a range of people who support the monument. I shared the Protect the Owyhee website, but I have some leave behinds you can take, and just continue to convince your friends and neighbors to sign the petition so that I can get to my 50,000 goal. It'll take some community effort, but there's 100,000 people in Bend. I don't know how many people live here, but I think we can get some more good numbers. Some other ways you can support is they really like to see business support and the economic value that national monuments can bring. So if you own a business, if you have a friend who owns a business and would be willing to lend a letter, that letterhead is really important. They kind of flip through the book and they say, wow, there's a lot of different kinds of businesses in support of this. That's been really fruitful. There will be more and more opportunities to get involved as we're coming into spring and summer. You'll see more events. So if you follow Onda's page and you want to sign up to volunteer or want to help support many of the other coalition partners, we have, like I shared on that last slide, there's a lot of different national and local organizations doing this work. So if you're members of those organizations, please just continue to support the effort there. And yeah, keep heeding the call to action. And honestly, that kind of brings us to the end, I think. And I was hoping we could just do a Q&A if that's allowed, or if we feel like doing that. Yeah. Do we need to turn on the lights? Are we falling asleep? Okay. It's kind of warm in here. All right, yeah.
Yeah, one thing about the designation in the wilderness requires an act of Congress.
Yeah.
Whereas a monument, the president signs it under the Antiquities.
Under the Antiquities Act, yes.
So that's the way to go.
Right.
That's how they got Newberry National Monument.
Yes.
And Siskiyou.
Yeah, the Cascade Siskiyou.
Yeah,
Yep.
so,
Yep.
So if we have the right president in office, we'll get her done.
Yes. Exactly. That's our hope too. This Congress has actually been exceptionally slow at passing legislation, so we really don't have much faith in that. They've passed like 30 bills in this Congress, and that's including everything, healthcare, all of it. So a large-scale wilderness bill is going to be pretty tough, and again, that will not include the tribal needs and concerns. So that's also just one more concern about the wilderness bill, but it is a layer of protection, and it will, prevent some pretty major things from happening. But monuments are the way to go in this era, like you're saying. So, yeah.
So what is Ben's saying?
Yeah. So what I know is that Bence is definitely not speaking for the community, but he has met with some specific ranchers in the community and has said, I've met with these people and this is what they want. A little context, the Bence family are also public lands ranchers, so they are definitely interwoven in that mix. So he may be
right in saying that some of these people don't want a national monument or don't want this type of wilderness protection. So he is proposing a wilderness bill. We have no idea what that means. We haven't seen it yet. We don't know how many acres that is, what lands are in the bill. And I would just go out on a limb to say he's probably not talking to the tribes about what they need in there.
He's a big time Trump
So,
guy.
yeah, so that's what that is. But again, we haven't seen the bill, so I can't really speak to the specifics. But the OBSC, the Owyhee Basin Stewardship Collaborative, they're those public lands ranchers. There's about 40 different permit holders that are a part of that group. They are still in support of Wyden's bill. So he's not actually speaking for the OBSC as an entity, which I think is very interesting because I think he's gonna have some enemies there if he's also not considering his other constituents, and especially throughout the rest of Malheur County. So, you know, what he did do though, by saying I'm going to introduce a bill against Wyden's bill is he basically just made the monument more viable because, you know, now we can say there is no path in Congress, full stop. You know, there's not going to be a House companion, and you have the local representative saying I'm not going to support the wilderness bill. And so you don't even have to wait for it to fail in Congress. We know outright that it will not pass. And that's okay too, because a lot of monuments have been designated off of legislation that couldn't get through Congress, right? And so that it kind of makes the monument more viable, because then the Biden administration says, well, clearly you've already met with all these stakeholders, you've come to an agreement, you've said this is the area we want to protect, so we will base the monument off of those conversations, right? So Wyden has laid the groundwork to make that happen.
So in other
Yeah.
words, to bypass Bence's bill,
We have to get the monument through the Antiquities Act by the president. Yeah. So exactly. But Biden's or Bence's, we really just have no idea the validity. He's just kind of throwing sand in the gears is our guess. Yeah.
Well, the other stakeholders with that collaborative, they really got on him of like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
They went right up into his face and said, stop,
Yeah.
just stop.
Yeah.
Do you have any sense of where in the Biden administration the discussion is at as far as an endpoint?
Yeah, we do. So the ED was just in Washington, D.C. So I can't share all the details, but what I can share with you is that the Center for Environmental Quality, who are basically the overseers of these land designations, are saying this looks great. You're basing the proposal off of Wyden's bill. There's not too much daylight. They also said that you don't want to get too crazy. Like we could go 3 million acres because there is that much land to be protected. But we're staying within the means, and so now, when July comes, July is this pivotal moment because things kind of stop because it is an election year. So, you know, Biden's going to hit the ground and he's not going to do any big political moves. That is when Wyden just needs to tell him it's go time, you know, because he introduced the legislation last July, his wilderness legislation, and by that time we can say we've given it a year. It won't happen, and if Bence introduces his bill, that's one more reason for the Biden administration to press go, because then they can say, we've given Congress their time. They're really cautious about like stepping on Congress's toes, especially in an election year, because they don't want to create too much, you know, political heat. But we have been told like that's gonna be the go time, so those conversations need to happen right then. Another thing that could happen, if Biden wins and is reelected, and Owyhee does not happen this year, that could still be his major monument that he protects in his next administration. So, you know, it's not the end all, but we are pushing for the 2024 deadline because we just don't know what will happen, right? So between now and July, I have a lot of convincing to do. So all those letters, all those petitions, they're all just adding up, because the more that they can say this is viable and they have the backing, the less political heat they'll have and the less
legal issues they might run into, which they never want to run into legal issues. But with the OBSC still on Wyden's corner, that's really huge because, of course, we're most concerned about local communities being in support of the bill. But as I said, if you have the Ontario City Council, the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, the Eastern Oregon Visitors Association, these are all organizations that have come forward in support of the monument. We've come a long way. So this is not, like I said, it's not 2015 anymore. Things are definitely changing. So yeah. Great question. It's a lot, but yeah, it's a lot of political ins and outs, but it's certainly possible. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question for the fans board folks who are here. And what are we doing something as a volunteer stewardship group about this? We should.
That's what I was wondering, if fans can help.
Yeah.
What can we do?
Sure. Number one is the letter. So the fans logo at the top, especially because in Bend, Central and Eastern Oregon, any organization from our area is like 10 points more than anywhere else, right? So if I get a letter from Western Oregon, that's great, but it's not as important. And that's literally from the horse's mouth. They've said, we need to see letters from Central and Eastern Oregon. No matter what the group is, we want to see that. So every letter I get from these communities is very helpful. And sharing your petition. If you have a newsletter and you want me to craft some communications just to say, hey, we did a presentation on this, here's the link to sign the petition, that would be really helpful just to get more eyes on it. And I'm happy to include some more educational pieces in your newsletter too. But those would be the big ones. We don't really have stewardship opportunities in the Owyhee at this time because we try not to go steward lands that can undo the stewardship, right? So we really only steward our protected public lands. So that includes a lot of the John Day Basin, more local regions, that Oregon Badlands, that sort of thing. Otherwise, I'd love for you to get out there. I do have some ways in which you can get out there though, and who you need to look up. You need to look up Friends of the Owyhee because they are our sister group out there in Ontario. They do lead hikes, they lead stewardship trips, and they're just a wealth of knowledge. If you guys are, I'm glad you're gonna have a geologist here soon because the Owyhee is the geology mecca of Oregon, but they know a lot. They know their stuff. They know their geology and ecology too. So I would highly recommend checking out their website. Tim Davis, who was in that video, he's their executive director and a dear friend. And he was just in Washington, D.C. too. So he's advocating boots on the ground, probably getting back. And I'll see him in the Owyhee on Monday. He's a busy guy. So yeah, we're good friends. Yeah.
So what's the membership of Friends? Tim is the lead. What's the membership of Friends of the Owyhee?
Like how many people are members? I think it's only like 600 people. It's really tiny.
Decent membership.
It's decent for a friends group, yeah. But
okay.
Yeah.
What would be the other reason that Vince, besides he's got a few ranchers that he's connected with, is there another interest that's affecting him on this matter?
Well, I think if whatever he introduces, it'll be way less acreage, right? So his interest is less oversight over ranching. I mean, that's the ultimate goal. I think he's most threatened that in a monument, things can get proclaimed that are actually already the law of the land. For example, a grazing permit retirement. Yeah. That can already happen tomorrow. You can go to the government and say, I want a grazing retirement on my permit, and they will offer you that.
Right.
But what we're saying in national monuments is that's being explicitly written, and it's just the fear of the unknown. Like once it's written down, it feels more real. And so I really think it's more of an existential fear than like an actual fear, because they just don't know that that's already the reality on public lands across the West. You can get grazing permit retirement, but if it's written down into the proclamation.
To clarify something,
Yeah.
that's the grazing permittee
That's right.
agreeing to that.
That's right.
In other words,
Not imposed on them.
right.
That's right.
So grazing permits continue.
Yeah.
In wilderness.
Yes.
Or in monuments.
Yes.
So really, there is no threat to grazing, other than some ranchers may choose, depending on who's got the lease, to give up their permit. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. But mining came up. Is there any mining interests that are pushing on this matter?
Now, explicitly in relation to Bence, I have no idea if he has a stake in mining, but that is a good question to ask. But there is explicit mining interest in the Owyhee, yes, today.
Current claims?
Yes, current claims. And if you looked up a map, it's scattered about,
So potentially a monument they can't invalidate those claims.
They cannot invalidate the claims, but it would be damn near impossible for them to do industrial scale mining to that degree because of the political pressure that it would cause.
Right, so it'll be a political thing.
Yeah, so it is an important layer, and even adjacent lands, right? So in the McDermott caldera, which wouldn't be protected under the monument, that would put more pressure and watchdogging on those claims, and they might choose to sell them. So
for the sake of the information for the folks, 1872 mining law still exists, has not been changed, still is the law of the land, and creates a great obstacle to doing what would be common sense things to do. Don't say with common sense, not environmentally radical, just common sense stuff. 1872 gets in the way, so.
It does, yes. So a monument offers a mineral withdrawal. That is an automatic proclamation under the monument. And a mineral withdrawal means you cannot mine the lands, even at small scale. So that is the most proactive measure we have against the 1872 mining law, because once a claim is staked, it is the law of the land. There's no turning back, and that includes, and usually includes, non-American companies. So, and in Owyhee, it's namely Canada and Australia exploring out there, not U.S. So then we'll buy back those EV batteries from the Owyhee. That's what we'll do. So if that happens.
Last thought.
Yeah.
Wilderness is not precluded. In other words, if they get a monument declaration, you can still have wilderness incorporated into the monument, but does that have to be a separate congressional action?
It does have to be. The president cannot designate wilderness. Yeah, so it does have to still be passed by Congress. But a good question, because if we had the monument and then smaller chunks of land were to be proclaimed as wilderness. For example, the Burns Paiute tribe hopes to get 31,000 acres in lands into trust, which would then become the reservation. It's actually lands they currently graze. They have a grazing permit on, and they manage a place called Jonesboro Ranch. That cannot happen through an Antiquities Act. The president cannot put lands into trust for tribes. So what would happen likely is the monument would happen, and then Wyden would introduce separate legislation that just gets the lands into trust for the tribe, which he already did previously. He actually had that legislation introduced separately and then combined it into the Owyhee bill, which is very confusing because the lands are technically a part of the Malheur watershed and not the Owyhee watershed. So he has a very clunky bill, which makes it even harder to pass into Congress, right? So another not helpful tool. But yes, you could still get wilderness outside of and layer in.
And last, one more thing.
That's
dangerous
great.
because I have so many thoughts that come to my mind. Wyden had a Wild Scenic River bill.
Right.
Is there any area involved in the Owyhee that would be encompassed by Wyden's bill relative to Wild Scenic?
Great question. Yes. So River Democracy Act, which is statewide, yes, that would elevate many rivers as wild and scenic. There are some tributaries to the Owyhee that would be included, including Bridge Creek. But he has not introduced it.
Right.
So we're not holding our breath. So that would be an added layer of protection that would bump up our 5% protected of the Owyhee, which is again just that wild and scenic river corridor on the Owyhee. But again, that doesn't include the uplands and highlands, which is where mining is going to happen, and large scale development. And mining is not the only threat, I should say. We just had the BLM comment on the large scale solar EIS projects on public lands, so that could be a part of what you see out on the landscape, which of course Julie's great description of the pronghorn and mule deer and elk and other ungulates that need to move through the landscape, that would just totally wreck that movement. Of course, especially through narrow canyonlands when you have plains in between canyons, that would be pretty devastating.
So unfortunately, again, balancing our energy needs with our conservation needs is age-old problem that we find ourselves in. So, yeah, but we gotta try. We've put our name in the hat, and we're going forward with this campaign full force. The fact that we were in DC at the big monuments flying is great. There's about 11 campaigns right now across the West for monuments. Some of those are really small scale. Some of them are expansion campaigns. The Berryessa Snow Mountain is one. The San Gabriel's outside of Los Angeles is another. Those are pretty easy, and I actually think those two specifically will happen in the next couple weeks, that we'll see Biden proclaim those expansion efforts. Then you have large scale ones like the Owyhee Protect the Dolores, which is in Colorado, and you have Chuckwalla National Monument in Southern California. However, with Chuckwalla, they have legislation that's a little bit more viable. So again, if that happens legislatively, that opens up for the Owyhee as well. So it's all just, a lot of moving parts, but we're all in it together, and I really hope that he just starts signing proclamations left and right, and that's the hope. So once the tribes officially ask him to do this, which is just right around the corner, then we'll probably see Secretary Holland come out and have those conversations. And we've seen that with other monument campaigns, where as soon as the tribes say we want this, they're there at the table. So that could be really huge. Yeah.
If the monument is successful by the end of the year, if we have an administrative change, how easy will that be to either reduce it or just negate the national monument? We all know what happened to Bears Ears and others.
Yes, so even though I don't know how familiar everyone is with Bears Ears, but the rollbacks that happened in the Trump administration, which is being fought currently in court as illegal, we hope that that precedent is set, that cannot happen again. I have no idea how to answer the what could happen, but that is why we're pressing 2024 so hard, because we just really don't know, and we're concerned too, because especially with the rush for lithium in a way that is not going to be sustainable, we're really concerned that we're going to start setting some bad precedent here in our home state of Oregon, and we could really truly be ground zero for some pretty scary industrial mining that could change our state and really set some serious precedents, because I just don't even think we know what's coming. I think we're really underprepared, and because the push to decarbonize our landscape is going to outweigh other concerns, and I don't know if we're learning from our lessons, so that is my worry, is that we're just trading one evil for the other. So yeah, it's crazy, guys. But yeah, we're really hoping for 2024. Like I said, if Biden administration continues, that means we have that much more time, which is huge. It just gives us that longer home run. So yeah, that would be one. Yeah. I have no opinions as a 501c3. I should say that. I have no opinions. I'm just giving you the facts. No opinions.
Are there any more questions? Well, gosh, thank you so much.
Oh, I hope you like it.
And I invite everybody to come up and check out the petition.